Welcome to Fantasy Football Aces. It's your boy William Wolf. We're back. And today we're going to get into the tight end position. Oh. See, Travis likes to dance. That's my boy right there, Travis Kelce. Now, the tight end position is one of the most difficult positions to draft in fantasy every single year. Just see Kyle Pitts last year. What a disaster. I took him. And he really screwed me over. I was stuck trying to figure out if I wanted to start him every week. Then I had to switch it up. And when he got hurt and just try to find somebody. And, you know, maybe I found Evan Engram. But who's this year's Evan Engram? That's the thing. Now, when it comes to this fantasy football strategy, you see the enormous disparity from 1 to 12. It's always like this, right? There's usually 1, 2, 3, 4 guys that you want to target. And after that, it's just a gamble. For me personally, I like to go after one of the top dogs. I thought Kyle Pitts was going to be the number 1 tight end in fantasy, in all of fantasy last year. I just thought that his talent was just off the charts. I thought Atlanta had a good offensive line. I just didn't realize that they were going to run the ball a million times out there in Atlanta and never throw the ball. And I didn't realize Marcus Mariota. I knew he was bad, but I didn't think he was that bad. Now, this year I'm targeting Travis Kelce. There's no doubt about that in my mind. But if you're not the type of guy that likes to spend a high draft pick on a tight end, don't waste your pick in the middle rounds. You could possibly go after Mark Andrews in like the mid to early rounds, but don't spend. I advise against that. I say allocate that money or those draft picks to running backs and receivers that you can get much better value for, and then you look for a dollar salary cap guy or a late add-on tight end like Evan Engram that you can get for next to nothing, and you could just take a gamble on him. You could drop him if he sucks. You can try to find a guy. Evan Engram was dropped multiple times last year, picked up multiple times. Doesn't matter how good the league was. This guy was floating around in waivers all year. This is the kind of guy that you can find. Last year, Engram, 98 targets, 73 caught, 766 yards and 4 touchdowns. Not an incredible stat line, but considering his ADP, it was fantastic. He came on late, especially during the playoff times for fantasy football, the late weeks of fantasy football. He was a type of player that helped win fantasy owners championships. Frankly, he was solid. Doug Peterson, he came in as a new head coach in Jacksonville. That really changed the whole dynamic of that team, the morale of that team. They made a deep run in the playoffs, lost to Kansas City in a pretty close game. This guy got Trevor Lawrence playing well. He got the whole team playing well. They were a solid fantasy football option across the board. Kirk was good. Evan Engram was solid, man. But if you're gonna go with the strategy of not taking Travis Kelce this year, this is the guy I have in mind for you. Who is at the next Evan Engram? That's the question. And to be honest with you, I think that guy is Hayden Hurst. Hayden Hurst last year caught 68 targets, 52 catches, 414 yards with 2 scores. I ended up picking him up in fantasy last year, as a matter of fact. He got hurt. You know, those numbers could have been better. I felt like he had some big games ahead of him with Joe Burrow, but you know, he couldn't stay on the field, got hurt at the really wrong times in fantasy football from that perspective. And he just was a disappointment. He's been a disappointment his whole year, his whole life in fantasy, in the NFL, sorry. Drafted in the first round by Baltimore. He was a disappointment there. Went on to Atlanta, where he had 56 catches on 88 targets for 571 yards and 6 touchdowns in 2020. Probably his best year. Showed some talent there, but he just hasn't really had it all come together. Maybe this year is his year. Who knows? Look at the comparison with Evan Engram. He's a guy leaving with a team like Evan Engram did with the Giants, a guy who had a lot of talent, who was a disappointment. Went over to Jacksonville, rejuvenated his career with a new head coach, Frank Reich, new head coach in Carolina. So you compare that to Doug Peterson out in Jacksonville, and then you start to compare Trevor Lawrence as a number one pick, and you got Bryce Young as a number one pick in Carolina. You're starting to see some things kind of match up here. Now, Bryce Young, the thing about him is he is tiny. And if you see one of my next videos on my philosophies, I have no draft teams, and Carolina Panthers happens to be one of those no draft teams. As I said before, I'm targeting Travis Kelce, so this strategy doesn't apply to me. But for you, Bryce Young, rookie quarterbacks tend to go to throw the ball to the tight end position. They try to look for that big tight end in the middle of the field. They get nervous about the pass rush. The pass rush is extremely a lot faster than it was in college. Rookie quarterbacks typically like to dump the ball down to running backs and tight ends. And see Hayden Hurst. I mean, he might be his favorite target this year. Hayden Hurst, they've got a lot of talent around him this year, quote unquote talent. They got DJ Chark, who he played pretty good for the Detroit Lions last year. Adam Thielen, he's had a solid year for the Vikings, and now he's over there in Carolina. Terrence Marshall Jr., he's talented young kid, and they got Jonathan Mingo. Now, I mentioned these guys, and none of them really stand out to me. I don't want any of them in fantasy football. So if you're looking at a strategy where you're not going to take a tight end early, why not Hayden Hurst late? There's a real good chance that, Bryce Young is just spraying this guy with targets. He's a first round talent for all that being said. I mean, who knows, man? Maybe this year's the year where he has some absurd touchdown rate. That happens every year in fantasy, where you find a guy who just catches like 9 touchdowns. And I see Mercedes Lewis a few years back. I think like 5 years back. I mean, Mercedes Lewis caught like 10 or 11 touchdowns, and he was just a fantasy god when it came to that kind of thing. You have to find those kind of players, right? Hayden Hurst is a guy that you can gamble with for $1 in salary, or draft him really late and see what he does. Plug him in. If you don't like him, you can afford to drop him, right? If you're picking Hayden Hurst late, that means you're able to spend your other rounds on other positions, wide receivers, running backs, quarterbacks, etc. That way, even depth. That way, if the weakness of your team is tight end, it is what it is. I mean, you're gonna most likely have to have a weakness on your team anyways. Why not the tight end position? Why not, take a gamble on a guy like Hayden Hurst, and maybe he will be the next Evan Engram. Me personally, as I said, I like to go after the big dog. In the years past, I went after Rob Gronkowski. When I say that, I mean when he was with New England. I was the kind of guy that went after Antonio Gates. I went after George Kittle right there in his prime more so. I obviously I've won a fantasy championship a few years ago with Travis Kelce. As a matter of fact, I had the Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce stacked that year. In my opinion, the disparity is so great at the tight end position. It's a huge advantage if you allocate some money to a guy like Travis Kelce, or take him in the second round and snake, and then build your team around him. I feel like you can find receivers and running backs of value that the disparity between positions will be much less. And if you can find that guy that is undervalued at the wide receiver and running back position, that's much easier to do than finding a tight end, for example. This is Fantasy Football Aces once again, where I'm going to put you in the best position to win. That's all you can do when you have pocket aces. That doesn't mean they're going to hold up. This episode was all about tight ends. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like and comment, subscribe to the channel, show your boy some love. I'm going to keep this thing rolling. We got plenty of good content coming on. I'm going to give you some philosophy and mock strategies that no one else is giving you. And we're going to win some fantasy football leagues this year. Peace.